we're going to hit the ground running today. Normally we do a little bit of a recap, but we're kind of coming to the end, so I think we're just going to press on. So, got verses 48. Well, we're going to be in chapter 48. Chapter 48. And would love to have somebody read verses 1 through 7. Does anybody want to read verses 1 through 7?
I can read it.
Okay, go for it.
Sometime later, Joseph was told, "Your father is ill." So he took his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, along with him. When Jacob was told, "Your son Joseph has come to you," Israel rallied his strength and sat up on the bed. Jacob said to Joseph, "God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan, and there he blessed me. And he said to me, I am going to make you fruitful and increase your numbers. I will make your community of peoples, and I will give this land as an everlasting possession to your descendants after you. Now then, your 2 sons born to you in Egypt before I came to you here will be reckoned as mine. Ephraim and Manasseh will be mine, just as Reuben and Simeon are mine. Any children born to you after them will be yours, and the territory they inherit will be reckoned under the names of their brothers. As I was returning from Padan, to my sorrow, Rachel died in the land of Canaan, while we were still on the way, a little distance from Ephrath. So I buried her there beside the road to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem.
All right, very good. All right, so what's happening in these verses here? What's going on? What's the big overall theme of this section?
He's been summoned to the bedside of his dying father to see him for the last time.
Right. What is significant about that?
Well, he's actually getting to do it after being in prison. I mean,
right.
All the years that they were separated, and I guess they've apparently lived there for some time in Egypt now before Jacob died. So they're just getting to be together.
Yeah. Anybody else? What's significant about what's happening in this section? They get to be together. That's certainly important. They haven't been together for a while.
I know I've missed a couple of weeks, but is this the first time Joseph has gone back?
No.
Okay.
Joseph and his father Jacob, they've been reunited. Now, of course, we don't know how much time has passed. It's tough to gauge exactly how much time has passed. You can get a good kind of a rough idea, but you have to put a lot of passages together. You have to look at the ages and all that. But they've been in Egypt for a while now, a couple of years, it seems, depending on how these stories fall, because sometimes Genesis will give us a big overview, cover a lot of history, and then jump back in time to a different period in history and give us a fuller explanation. So we're not really sure exactly how much time has passed, but Joseph and his father Jacob they've already met up, so they've had wonderful, reunion and all of that. We don't know how often they were able to see one another. Joseph is certainly a man with a very important job to do, so he's probably not just lounging around at his father's house. He's a busy man. He's got a lot going on. But what is significant about this event?
It looks like there's like foreshadowing of the blessing that he's going to pass on.
Yeah, he's definitely going to pass on some blessings. You remember that in the ancient world, anyways, I don't know if people do it much today. Maybe if somebody knows, they can let me know. But in my family anyways, I don't know of the practice of, if a person knows they're going to die soon, calling the family or in and starting to bless them and tell them things. Maybe that happens in some families, but this was a big deal in the ancient world. So Jacob realizes that his time is getting short. Now, we don't know how long we've got, right? I mean, Jacob doesn't know how long he's got, but he knows that I'm getting old. And yes, I might have another couple years, or I might have another couple days. We just, you don't know. You don't know the day or the hour most of the time of when you're going to pass. So he's at the end of his life, and it's a big deal to pass on a blessing, to do that for your children and things of that nature. And even though the blessings were not considered prophecy, because they're not given directly from God, there is an interaction that God utilizes or in somehow fulfills these blessings, however he does it. But they were not like, thus saith the Lord, this is going to happen, that's going to happen, those kinds of things. But they were held in high regard in the ancient world, these blessings. So when an important figure, when an important person, especially the head of a household, brings in their children, it was a big deal, and everybody listened to it. It was really important. You remember that this happened with Isaac. You remember Isaac gets old. He knows the time is getting close. Of course, he had a number of years as well. But he gets to the point where his eyesight's not doing too well, and he calls his son Esau in. Now, there's a little difference because Esau's his favorite, and he seems to want to give Esau all the blessings and all of that and leave Jacob out of it. But we see there a very similar event when, especially the patriarchs, when somebody in the ancient world was getting ready to pass on, they would want to present blessings. So this is a real significant event in the life of Jacob. He's getting ready to die, and it's a very significant in the life of Joseph. Now, who is called in for this blessing?
His two sons.
Whose two sons?
Joseph's two sons.
Joseph's two sons and Joseph, right? Are
Right.
any of the other brothers brought in?
Doesn't appear to be.
Yeah, not yet. Not yet. Not sure, but kind of seems like, was Joseph the favorite child in the past?
Yes.
I think we still see a little bit of that favoritism in this section as well. Remember that biblical characters, even godly ones, and Jacob has changed. He's been transformed, right? He's come a long way, but he still carries some baggage, and this, I think, is one of those indications. He doesn't bring all the sons in at once. He's going to bring his favorite in, and they're going to do something special for him alone, which again was what his father wanted to do, right? It got reversed. He got tricked out of it and all that. It got reversed, but he's in some ways following in the footsteps of his father, keeping this favoritism going. At least that's the way I see it. I think there's a little bit of that favoritism going on there. But he brings him in. He's going to do something special. But this is a big deal. It's a big event. And so he calls in all three of these men. Now, in verse 5, what does Jacob do? Verse 5, what does Jacob do?
Well, he says that Ephraim and Manasseh is going to be sons of him.
Right.
Instead of
the younger one instead of the older one.
And did the blessing have something to do with the inheritance they get?
Yeah, well, everybody typically gets a blessing, and we'll see that later on. All the children will get a blessing, but there is a special blessing, and there is a double portion aspect to what happens. We see that kind of thing. We see that in Jacob's early life, actually, with him and Esau. You remember he tricks his brother out of the double portion, and then he tricks him out of the blessing. So there were two separate aspects to kind of what the firstborn would often get. But yeah, there was the blessing that was connected. There was a special blessing that was connected to the firstborn that had to do with some of these things. So Jacob he's basically adopting these two boys, isn't he? From now on, Ephraim and Manasseh are going to be considered as Jacob's sons. He says, your children after will be yours, but these two boys are going to be considered mine. Now, when he does that, Jacob is actually giving Joseph the double portion blessing. Now, why do I say that? What was the double portion, first of all?
Twice as much of everything.
Twice as much of the inheritance. You get a double, right? If you have two children, you divide it up in threes. You give 2/3 to the firstborn, and then you give that 1/3 to the secondborn. And it doesn't matter how many children you have, you just divide it up one more, and then that child gets it. So how is Joseph getting the double portion of the inheritance? In what way?
Well, both of his sons are receiving an inheritance just like they were his son.
That's right.
He's getting twice as much.
That's right. Joseph is getting twice as much because he has two of his boys now who are taking his place, in a sense. So through his two boys, he's getting this double portion. So he doesn't get the blessing of being the head of the household and all of that, but he does get the double portion, and that's given to the children. We'll see the blessing later, who that falls to, that special head of the household kind of blessing. But he gets this double portion. Again, they're counted as Jacob's children. And this is why we have Ephraim and Manasseh mentioned as part of the tribes of Israel. When you get into the book of Exodus and further, you're going to see that the nation of Israel is broken up, and there's the two tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh, but you don't find the tribe of Joseph, because Ephraim and Manasseh are in a sense the tribe of Joseph.
I just want to note that I don't think it's totally related to this, James, but
okay.
I was thinking that Joseph really took care of his father and rescued them from the land where they were. He has taken care of his son, has taken care of Jacob. He has put him in a safe place. He has rescued his people, in a sense.
Yes.
And it's kind of like your own children, the ones that are looking out after you, that are the ones that are taking care of you, are those that you're most likely to, be able to help out in some way because of you. I don't think that's it, but there's just something about that.
Yeah, there may be some aspect to that. That just may be more, if that's going on, and not sure, but if that's going on in Jacob's mind, you're right. Joseph has taken care of Jacob. He's provided for the whole family and all of that. So, this kind of double portion wouldn't necessarily be unreasonable in a sense. It would be culturally problematic because culturally everything went to the firstborn. But yeah, I can understand what you're saying. I'm not sure that that's the only thing, or that may not even be what's going on. But yeah, I can see that. I can understand that. That may be an application for us today, where we can see people doing that.
I was thinking more of the rescue. I was thinking of the theme of rescue throughout the Bible, from the land of Egypt and the eventual rescue of the people and of us. I was thinking of Joseph being almost salvation to the rescue of the entire nation.
Yes. No, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. 100%. He is the savior, right? If we can use that term, he is the savior of Israel. The savior of Israel. Interesting to think about that. The savior of Israel. All right, let's look at verses 8. We're going to move on. We're going to look at verses 8 through 22. 8 to 22. Where am I at? 8 through 22. Does anybody have an itching, a desire to read? If not, I can read. I'll just give you an opportunity. All right, nobody's jumped in, so I'll read. All right, so we're looking at 48, starting in verse 8. When Israel saw Joseph's sons, he said, "Who are these?" And Joseph said to his father, "They are my sons whom God has given me here." And he said, "Bring them to me, please, that I may bless them." Now the eyes of Israel were dim with age, so that he could not see. So Joseph brought them near him, and he kissed them and embraced them. And Israel said to Joseph, "I never expected to see your face, and behold, God has let me see your offspring also." Then Joseph removed them from his knees, and he bowed himself with his face to the earth. Joseph took both of them, Ephraim in his right hand, towards Israel's left hand, and Manasseh in his left hand towards Israel's right hand, and brought them near him. And Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it on the head of Ephraim, who was the younger, and his left hand on the head of Manasseh, crossing his hands, for Manasseh was the firstborn. And he blessed Joseph and said, "The God before whom my fathers, Abraham and Isaac, walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life long to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all evil, bless the boys. And in them let my name be carried on, and the name of my fathers, Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth." When Joseph saw his father laid his right hand on the head of Ephraim, it displeased him. And he took his father's hand to move it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. And Joseph said to his father, "Not this way, my father, since this one is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head." But his father refused and said, "I know, my son, I know. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. Nevertheless, his younger brother shall be greater than he. His offspring shall become a multitude of nations." So he blessed them that day, saying, "By you, Israel will pronounce blessings, saying, God make you as Ephraim and as Manasseh." Thus he put Ephraim before Manasseh. And Israel said to Joseph, "Behold, I am about to die, but God will be with you and will bring you again to the land of your fathers. Moreover, I have given to you rather than to your brothers one mountain slope that I took from the hand of the Ammonites with my sword and with my bow." All right, so Joseph brings his sons to his father for a blessing. Now, what was the normal order of a blessing? We've kind of already talked about it, but what's the normal order?
Bless the oldest.
Yeah, you bless the oldest. Now, you probably bless the younger too, but you're going to bless the older, right? The firstborn with more, and it'd be more prestigious and preeminent and all of that kind of thing. It's also interesting to note that normally the oldest son was on the right. The right hand was placed. If you were blessing an older and a younger at the same time, you'd put the right hand on the oldest and the left hand on the youngest. Does anybody know why? Why is that?
Are you asking why the right hand's more significant?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay. Anybody else? Want to
Well,
give a shot?
I know it. I know it's important that, like, Christ is at the right hand of God.
Right?
So there's something to it, at least symbolically, that the right hand is the preferred hand.
Yes, in the ancient world, the right hand was seen as the seat of power, authority, preeminence, those concepts. So the right hand or on the right or something like that, that was associated often with power, was associated often with authority. So we'll see, for example, in Psalm 16:8, it says, I have set the... Somebody want to say something?
Oh, I just was going to say on the day of judgment, the righteous are on the right.
Right, yes.
And the lost are on the left.
Yeah, that's right. There'll be a separation, right? Yeah.
There's another right and left.
In
Sorry.
Psalm 6, that's okay. That's all right. Jump in there. Psalm 16:8 says, I have set the Lord always before me because he is at my right hand. I shall not be shaken. What does that mean? Because he is at my right hand, because he is the source of my power, because he is the source of authority, and he is the protection. And so right has to do with power and things of that nature. Psalm 109, verse 31 says, for he stands at the right hand of the needy one to save him from those who condemn his soul to death. So again, we see this concept of the right hand. Let me give you one more. Matthew 26:64. Jesus said to him, you have said so, but I tell you, from now on, you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power. That gives us kind of the clear indication. Right hand is associated with power. It's associated with authority and those concepts. So very important in the ancient world. The right hand, seated at the right hand of power, was positions of authority. So instead of the older being blessed by Jacob with his right hand on him and getting that blessing, there's a reverse order. Jacob kind of switches his hands, which is very interesting. The text says that he was that his eyes were dim, right? In verse 10, it says that his eyes were dim, but I don't think he was completely blind. And I think he kind of knew what he was doing because of what he says. He says, you know, I know what I'm doing. Don't worry about it. But when he reverses his hands, what happens with Joseph? What's Joseph say and do? And
Puts them back, tries to put them back.
Yeah. He right, verse 17, when Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand on the head of Ephraim, it displeased him, right? He was not happy. He was not happy at all. What does he think his father has done? What's he think? His father's eyes. He made a mistake. Yeah. You know, sometimes, not always, but sometimes people, maybe us at times, can think that older folks, the elderly or whatever, are maybe not capable of functioning properly, or they make mistakes or whatever. And I think that's what's going on here with Joseph. I mean, clearly it's what's going on with Joseph, because it displeases him, and he, in a sense, he kind of rebukes his father, doesn't he? It's probably a very soft rebuke, but he thinks that Jacob has made a mistake. He has made an error. Time to fix it, Dad, right? You got the wrong one. I know, right? He might even be thinking, I know you're blind. You got the wrong one. Here, do this. Do it this way, right? So he's going to take control and tell his father to do it the right way. But what does Jacob say?
I know. I know, my son. I know what I'm doing.
That's right. Notice that he says it twice. Very interesting, right? He says, I know, my son. I know, right? I'm not that bad off. I know what I'm doing, right? Is really what he's saying. I know what I'm doing. Now, just think for a moment. In Jacob's life, who was the older? Was Jacob the older, or was Esau? Who was?
Esau was, wasn't he? He came out first.
Yes, Esau was first.
That's right. Esau is first. So that makes Jacob the younger, right?
Correct.
All right, yeah. And so who received the blessing and the double portion? Was it Esau or was it Jacob?
Jacob.
It was Jacob. Now, we all know what happened in Jacob's life. Jacob took the bull by the horns. He took things into his own hands. And he made, right, he tried to make things happen. He stole the double portion and the blessing, and was deceptive, deceitful, and all, conniving. The reality is that God was always, from the very beginning, before they were even born, God had planned that the younger was going to be the one who received the blessings, and through that one was going to come the seed. God was going to do that regardless. It wasn't like God needed or made Jacob be deceitful and deceptive and all that. He worked through it. But he was going to have that happen anyways. But it's a very interesting thing to see. A lot of times there's this reversal in Scripture. The thing is normally this way, right? Normally the younger serves the older. Normally the older has the double portion. Normally the older is the one with preeminence and power and all of that. But a lot of times within the Scriptures, there's a reversal of the norm, what we might consider the norm, or what the world would say. Can you think of any other examples where there's a reversal of what we normally think of or see that the Bible talks about? Some kind of a reversal. I'll give you a hint. In the New Testament, Jesus talks about a reversal.
The last shall be first and the first last.
Yeah, that's it. Isn't that a reversal?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a reversal. There's another reversal we see in the life of the rich man and Lazarus. Right? The rich man in this life had all kinds of blessings and fruitfulness and all that, and Lazarus was poor and all that, and then there's a reversal. Now, there's a reason why there's a reversal, but you see the reversal there. But yeah, the first shall be last, the last shall be first. We see something similar with the concept of armies and nations, and typically the larger army is more powerful than a smaller army. Isn't that right?
I'll give him a minute.
Is that true?
Come on, babe. Come here.
Hey, James, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Surprise, surprise.
Surprise, I can hear you.
I just now got this thing figured out.
There you go. Hey, better late than never.
Well, rather, let me put it this way. My daughter just got it figured out.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Thank the Lord
So
for children.
y'all go ahead and I'll listen. Yeah.
All right. So when you think about an army, if you have a small army and an enemy has a large army, typically the large army is the one that's going to win, right? Now, we know of some examples in history where that's not the case. But biblically, we see that as well with Gideon. What does God do with Gideon? There's a reversal. God takes this man who's trying to collect all these people for this big army, as many men as they can muster up, and he starts to slowly whittle them away. He's going to use the small. So anyways, there's this kind of reversal that we see a lot of times. We'll see the younger one who is not considered prominent rise to prominence or something along those lines. So you'll see that. Look for that in the scriptures, this kind of reversal. The last shall be first, first shall be last. The older will serve the younger. There's these kinds of interesting changes. Another strange, it's kind of a reversal in a sense, is where Jesus talks about doing good to those who persecute you, love your enemies, also, right? That's kind of a reversal of the normal way of thinking. So think about those things.
He also says when we come to church, don't go sit in the front row and strut in, but to take the back row and wait until somebody asks you to go to the front.
Yeah, right. When you go into a worship service or something like that, that's right. Or when you go into a feast, don't take the place of prominence. Don't try to sit as the person of importance. Take a lower seat, and then you'll be exalted, right? Humble yourself. There's a reversal. Humble yourself, and God will exalt you, right? Humble yourself, and you'll be lifted up. All right. So, anyways, in the text here, Jacob says that Joseph, he protests. This isn't the way it's supposed to be, Dad. You know, you're supposed to bless the firstborn with your right hand. You know, that's the right hand of power and authority and those kinds of things, and the younger with the left. And Jacob says, I know, don't worry about it. He says, both of the boys are going to be great, but the younger is going to be more powerful. The younger is going to be more powerful. Now, let me read to you what a brother in Christ said. Richard Rogers, who was a teacher at Sunset, who wrote a number of books and did videos and all that kind of stuff. He's since passed on. He's with the Lord now. But he said this about this section. He said, Manasseh will be a great tribe. He will possess great land, but the younger brother will be greater than the older brother. The force of that blessing will be so powerful that the whole nation of Israel will be addressed as Ephraim in the days to come. Manasseh inherits most of the land. Ephraim only possesses a small territory, but he will be the most powerful tribe in all Israel other than Judah. Later on, there will be two nations. One will be called Judah, and one will be called Ephraim. So he makes the point, and he's talking about, you know, he's making reference to later on in the history of Israel. He makes the point that Manasseh inherits more land, but Ephraim is the more prominent one. So there's a fulfillment of what's going on here. God is bringing about this kind of blessing. All right, anything on this chapter? 48.
James,
Try again, Tim. You're a little broken up.
just a question. Is
Yes.
the scripture that says, does that fit in with like the concept that the scripture in the New Testament of the first shall be last and the last shall be first?
Yes, right. Yeah, absolutely. That reversal concept. Yes, it does. Anything else? Anybody else? Chapter 48. All right, we're going to move into 49. All right, 49, verses 1 through 27. I guess I'll read this again, too, unless somebody is really itching to read. 49, starting in verse 1, says, And Jacob called his sons and said, now notice, this is after, right? So he calls in Joseph, and he calls in Joseph's two sons. There's a special thing that's going on with them. He wants to treat them a little special. Joseph gets the double portion of the family inheritance kind of thing because he has two of his sons that will become tribes in Israel. But now he's going to call everybody in. So Jacob calls his sons and he said, gather yourselves together that I might tell you what shall happen to you in the days to come. Assemble and listen, O sons of Jacob. Listen to Israel, your father. Reuben, you're my firstborn, my might, and the first fruits of my strength. Notice the word preeminence, right? Preeminent in dignity and preeminent in power. That was the firstborn was meant to be all of that. Unstable as water. You shall not have preeminence because you went up into your father's bed. Then you defiled it. He went up to my couch. Simeon and Levi are brothers. Weapons of violence are their swords. Let my soul come not into their counsel. O my glory, be not joined to their company. For in their anger they killed men, and in their willfulness they hamstrung oxen. Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce, and their wrath, for it is cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. Judah, your brothers shall praise you. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons shall bow down before you. Judah is a lion's cub. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He stooped down. He crouched as a lion, as a lioness. And who dares to rouse him? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until tribute comes to him. And to him shall be the obedience of the peoples, binding his fowl to the vine, and his donkey's colt to the choice vine. He has washed his garments in wine, and his vesture in the blood of grapes. His eyes are darker than wine, and his teeth whiter than milk. Zebulun shall dwell in the shores of the sea. He shall become a haven for ships, and his border shall be at Sidon. Issachar is a strong donkey, crouching between the sheepfolds. He saw that a resting place was good, and that the land was pleasant. So he bowed his shoulders to bear, and became a servant at forced labor. Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan shall be a serpent in the way, a viper by the path that bites the horse's heels, so that his rider falls backwards. I wait for your salvation, O Lord. Raiders shall raid Gad, but he shall raid at their heels. Asher's food shall be rich, and he shall yield royal delicacies. Naphtali is a doe let loose that bears beautiful fawns. Joseph is a fruitful bough by a spring. His branches run over the wall. The archers bitterly attack him, shoot at him, and harass him severely. Yet his bow remains unmoved. His arms were made agile by the hands of the mighty one of Jacob. From there is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. By the God of your father, who will help you? By the Almighty, who will bless you with blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that crouches beneath, blessings of the beasts and of the womb, blessings from your father are mighty beyond the blessings of my parents, up to the bounties of the everlasting hills. May they be on the head of Joseph and on the brow of him who was set apart from his brothers. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf, in the morning devouring the prey, at evening dividing the spoil. All right, a long reading, but from that reading, can you tell me which child got the most description and blessing?
Joseph.
Joseph. Surprise, surprise. Joseph again is receiving all kinds of extra benefits and blessings, right? It's very interesting that most of the brothers get a little short blurb. Jacob almost runs on and on with Joseph. So again, there's something going on there. But who else receives a bit more attention? Can you remember who kind of seemed to get a lot of? Judah.
Mm-hmm.
Judah got a lot more. That's right.
Judah.
Now with Judah, what do we remember about Judah? What are some of the things that we remember?
he was not in favor of selling Joseph, was he?
Yeah, I don't think he was. Well, he wasn't in. No, Reuben was the one who did not want Joseph to be harmed. Reuben was, not Judah. Reuben wanted him safe. He actually wanted to rescue him.
It was Judah who offered to take the place of Benjamin for his freedom to go back to his father.
That's right. That's right. Remember, Judah becomes the sacrifice. He becomes the substitute. He becomes the atonement in a sense, right? He becomes the one who is purchasing back, redeeming, right? He takes the place of, or he's at least willing to take the place of his brother Benjamin. So absolutely. So there's a blessing here that pushes us forward.
Judah also did not fulfill his obligation to his daughter. There was a blurb in there with Tamar where he was unfaithful to the fulfillment of the blessing there.
Yes, that's right. He was unfaithful, but I think what happens is we see that change, right? Where many of the other brothers, I don't know that we see much of a major change in their life, but you're right. He has that incident with Tamar, but at the end, remember, there's kind of a repentance. He says, you know, she's more righteous than I am. There's a confession that goes on, and then of course he takes the place. But you're right. Judah has had some interesting aspects of his life as well. Now, who was the firstborn? It's pretty simple, right? Reuben is the firstborn. Now, what was special about the firstborn in the ancient world? This is all old hat. You should know this.
He would get he would get the most when their father died.
That's right. Get the double portion of the inheritance. And also get the blessing. The blessing was to be the head of the household. It was kind of to be the one in charge, the one in command. Now, those two things were not necessarily tied together, as we've seen before. But, and we saw here as well, because Joseph is the one who gets the double portion. He gets the double blessing through his sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. Now, Reuben was supposed to be preeminent. He was supposed to get all of this. But he's not chosen, is he?
No.
In fact, he's the opposite, right? He was firstborn, right? Verse 3, you were my firstborn. You were the first fruits. Notice the repetition of this concept of firstborn, first fruits, unique, special. You are my strength, preeminent in dignity, preeminent in power. But then he goes on to say in verse 4, you shall not have preeminence. Okay, so he is not going to get the blessing as the firstborn. He's not going to get the head of the household blessing. So if it's not Reuben, right, if it's not the firstborn, who's going to be next?
Well, then it should be the next son. That's
right. So you've got the second or the third, right? You're going to kind of go down the list. Now we know that what happens with the second and the third sons?
Well, they're just kind of skipped over together.
Yeah, well, they're definitely not receiving the blessing because of their extreme violence, right? So he passes them over as well. So Simeon is not going to get it. Levi's not going to. In fact, he says you're going to be scattered throughout Jacob, scattered throughout Israel. Very interesting that what happens later on, Levi never gets, the tribe of Levi, they never get a land inheritance, do they?
No.
They are scattered. Go ahead. Somebody want to say something?
But they're given the priestly duties, right?
They're given the priestly duties, and they have cities, right? They're given cities, but the cities are all throughout the nation of Israel. So they are scattered throughout Israel. The same thing happens with Simeon as well. Simeon gets a plot of land and all that, but they end up getting dispersed later on in the history throughout the whole nation. So that, I mean, all of this comes true, right? God is using this, and he's gonna fulfill this, even though it's not God saying it, thus says the Lord. But this is stuff that's going to happen, and happens in the history. So Simeon receives land, but again loses it and scattered. Levi gets 48 cities, but they're scattered throughout the nation. So in the end, who is the one who gets the preeminent blessing? It's not the firstborn, it's not the secondborn, it's not the thirdborn.
Joseph.
No, he gets a double portion
It's
blessing.
Judah.
It's
What?
Judah.
It's Judah because
Oh,
his
yeah.
his brothers will praise him.
That's right. That's right. And your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. There's power. Your father's sons shall bow down before you, right? He gets all of the blessing as the head of the household. He takes over that position, we could say. Now it's important.
James, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, should Jacob's blessings, are they, I have a feeling I know the answer, but he knows his children. He knows his sons and their character. He knows a lot about each one of them. And I get the sense as we read this, a lot of the blessing is based on that knowledge. But isn't it also some divine prophecy in it too?
Yeah, in the ancient world, this was a common practice for the father and people in positions of authority to give blessings. It wasn't typically looked at as a divine revelation. And even here, Jacob never says, thus says the Lord or something along those lines. But, so I want to say yes and no. Absolutely. He knows his children. He knows their character. He knows the history. And so he's kind of looking forward and kind of presenting of what kind of people they are and who they're going to be. But God is absolutely working in the midst of this. Whether God, gave Jacob these words to speak by inspiration, or however it's working out, this is going to be fulfilled. God's plan is working out through all of this. Yeah. So there's definitely some of that in there, but I'm not sure that Jacob would have viewed it that way. I don't know if the children would have viewed it that way. They might have. But there is prophecy here. But these blessings.
Well, if it comes to pass,
yeah.
If it happens as he says it's going to happen,
yeah,
I just see a prophetic thread in there.
Yeah, and again, it's one of those things where, yes, I guess the short answer would be yes. Yeah, there's prophetic things that are coming out of this that God is using. So, however it happens, yeah, this stuff is going to happen in the future. There's some prophecy that's going on. And I just say that these blessings were not typically considered prophetic in the times when they were spoken, if that makes sense. So yes, God is working in this. God may very well be inspiring Jacob to say these words. So it's kind of like a yes and a no. Short answer, yeah, there's prophecy in here. It's going to be fulfilled. The long, more complicated answer is yes and no. Jacob is unlikely that he thought that this was prophecy. So he could be speaking prophecy and not knowing it. That's true. So again, yeah, all this is going to work out. It's going to be fulfilled. Now, Judah is going to fulfill more of this kind of prophecy. If we want to look at it in that light, he is going to fulfill more of that. But it's pointing us forward to ultimately to who, or to whom, however you want to pronounce it. Put that, whatever the proper form is.
To Jesus.
That's right. Absolutely. It's pointing forward to Jesus. He's going to be the one his brothers are going to praise. Hands going to be on the neck of his enemies. His father's sons are going to bow down to him. He's going to be a lion. He's like a lion. He is the lion of the tribe of Judah. Those kinds of things. The scepter shall not depart from Judah. The ruler's staff between his feet. So absolutely, that's all talking about what's going to be fulfilled in Jesus later on. I want to take a moment and talk briefly, though, about this concept of firstborn, because this is going to come up a number of times. So biblically, the firstborn was not always the first one literally born. And I think we've started to see that already. Hopefully you've started to see that there's been this shift between at least the blessings that the firstborn received. We see it with Ephraim and Manasseh. You know, later on, we find that Ephraim, although he was the secondborn, God says of him later on, "You're my firstborn." So there's this concept of the firstborn is preeminent, not always the first one literally born. Think about King David. What number was King David before he was king? When he was, he was last, right? He was the very last. What is it? 8 sons of Jesse. So he's the last one, and yet he is called by God his firstborn as well. Again, this is important because when we get to the New Testament, it's going to say that Jesus is the firstborn of all creation. Now, if we take a strict literal interpretation of the concept of firstborn, when the Jehovah's Witnesses come knocking at our door, we're going to have a problem, because they're going to say the firstborn means the first one born, the first one to come forth. Jesus is the firstborn of creation because he is the first one created. He's not the creator, he's the first one created, because that's what firstborn means. Does anybody see a problem with that?
Well, yeah.
I hope everybody sees a problem with that. I don't know that was a trick question. Yes, everybody should be shaking their head. Yes, there's a problem with that, right? There are multiple passages that tell us that Jesus is the creator, that he's God in the flesh, all these kinds of things. But we can get tripped up if somebody comes along and says, see, firstborn means firstborn. He's the firstborn of creation. That is, he's the first created thing, right? He's the first thing that God the Father created. That's why he's the firstborn of all creation. No, he is the firstborn, not because he's the first thing created, but because he is preeminent. Remember, that's what happened with Reuben, right? We looked up here. Reuben initially was supposed to be preeminent, but he lost that. Judah is the one who becomes, we could say, preeminent. He is the one who is receiving all these blessings and stuff. And then again, we have Ephraim and Manasseh. Ephraim's called firstborn when he was not firstborn. The nation of Israel is called God's firstborn. And it wasn't the first nation created, that's for sure. There were other nations that came into existence before the nation of Israel. We see, again, with Jesus and other things. So firstborn, I just wanted to kind of emphasize that firstborn does not always mean the first one born. What it means is preeminent. A lot of times it is the first one who comes out of the womb, but not always. And especially when it's talking about this concept of power, of authority, of headship, it has less to do with the first one physically born and more to do with the concept that this person is going to be the preeminent one, the special one, the unique one. Now, the rest of the blessings, they're important, but they're just not as important as like the first few that we see here, as well as Joseph's. Joseph's gets all of that. So I don't know that we need to spend any real time in here. Most of this is pretty straightforward. Does anybody have any questions on any of this? Chapter 49, this blessing here?